In 2018, Boeing repurchased more of its own stock than it spent on research and development. That same year, one of its planes fell out of the sky. 5 months later, another one did. 346 people were dead. Boeing had spent $43 billion buying back its own stock. Then came the crashes. And the money trail leads somewhere most people never looked. Here's what makes this story different from every other Boeing story you've seen. The crashes, the grounded planes, the grieving families. That's not the real scandal. The real scandal is what happened in the 2 decades before the first plane went down. A carefully engineered transfer of wealth, running from Boeing's engineering floors straight into the pockets of Wall Street and its own executives, while the people responsible for actually building safe aircraft were systematically sidelined, silenced, and pushed out. By the time the 737 MAX was certified to fly, Boeing had returned over $60 billion to shareholders through buybacks and dividends in under a decade. Its stock had delivered annual returns of nearly 30%, beating Apple, beating Microsoft. Its CEO was the highest paid executive in the aerospace industry, and its engineers were being overruled by accountants. This is the story of how the greatest plane maker in history was reverse engineered, not by a competitor, not by technology, but by its own balance sheet. Follow the money. Everything else is just wreckage. To understand what Boeing became, you first have to understand what Boeing was. The company was founded in Seattle in 1906 by William Boeing, a timber magnate who became obsessed with flight. For most of the next 8 decades, Boeing ran like an engineering society more than a corporation. Its engineers weren't just employees, they were the decision makers. They held the patents, they designed the wings. They had the final say on whether a plane was ready to fly. Financial performance was seen as a result of getting the engineering right, not a substitute for it. In the 1960s, Boeing bet the entire company on a plane that didn't exist yet, the 747, and changed how humans move around the planet. By the mid-1990s, Boeing was at the peak of its powers. It had just launched the 777, the most commercially successful wide-body jet ever built. Boeing invited its airline customers into the design process from day one, delivered the plane on time and on budget, and over 2,100 would eventually be ordered. It was the last plane Boeing built the old way. Because in 1997, Boeing made a decision that looked brilliant on paper and turned out to be catastrophic in practice. It acquired its struggling rival, McDonnell Douglas, in a $13.3 billion stock deal. On the surface, it made perfect sense. McDonnell Douglas brought a massive defense portfolio, F-15 fighters, Apache helicopters, military contracts that generated steady government cash regardless of what the airline industry was doing. Boeing got bigger, got more diversified, got a buffer against the boom and bust cycle of commercial aviation. What Boeing didn't fully account for was the culture it was absorbing. McDonnell Douglas was not a well-run company. Its last genuinely innovative commercial aircraft was the DC-9, designed in the 1960s. By the time Boeing acquired it, MD had essentially stopped investing in its future. Every new plane was a derivative of an old one, costs were cut to the bone, and the management philosophy was bluntly summarized by one insider as good enough for government work. Fix it later and charge for it. The merger was supposed to be Boeing taking over McDonnell Douglas. What happened instead was the opposite. In what analysts would later call a reverse takeover, McDonnell Douglas's finance-first executives moved into the most powerful seats at the new combined company. Harry Stonecipher, who had run McDonnell Douglas into the ground, became Boeing's president, and he made no secret of what he intended to do. When people say, "I changed the culture of Boeing," Stonecipher said, that was the intent, so that it's run like a business rather than a great engineering firm. That single sentence is the tombstone for the old Boeing. The first thing the new leadership did was move the headquarters. In 2001, Boeing packed up and left Seattle, the city where it had been founded, where its factories were, where its engineers lived and worked, and relocated its executive offices to Chicago. The official reason was neutrality. The real reason was $60 million in tax incentives from the state of Illinois. Think about what that decision signaled. The people running Boeing no longer needed to be near the planes. They needed to be near the banks, the analysts, the institutional investors. The distance between the executive suite and the assembly line was now measured in hundreds of miles. And it showed in every decision that followed. The engineers who had spent entire careers at Boeing started calling themselves heritage engineers after the merger. The new motto said everything, more with less. Through the early 2000s, the finance-first culture systematically dismantled what had made the old Boeing great. In 2005, Boeing sold its own manufacturing facility in Wichita to private equity, outsourcing work its engineers had done for decades. The 787 Dreamliner had 70% of its engineering farmed out to over 50 outside suppliers. The logic was pure finance. Let someone else carry the cost, keep Boeing's balance sheet clean. The result was a production disaster. The 787 ran 3 years late. Suppliers delivered parts that didn't fit together. Engineers who raised concerns were told to stay in their lane. But the financial metrics looked spectacular. From 2010 to 2018, Boeing returned more than 100% of its free cash flow to shareholders through buybacks and dividends. More than 100%, meaning Boeing wasn't just handing back everything it earned, it was borrowing money to give to shareholders. Its stock climbed from around 60 in 2010 to over 440 by early 2019. CEO Dennis Muilenburg took home $23 million in 2018 alone. The board called it a record year. The story of the 737 MAX starts not with engineering, but with panic. In 2010, Airbus announced the A320neo, a fuel-efficient upgrade to its best-selling jet. American Airlines, one of Boeing's most loyal customers, signed a deal with Airbus for 260 planes. Boeing could spend $20 billion and a decade building a new plane from scratch, or it could upgrade the existing 737 and get to market fast. So Boeing chose the upgrade, and immediately ran into a problem its own engineers had warned about. The new engines were too large to fit under the 737's low-slung wings the same way the old ones did. The aerodynamics changed in ways that pilots trained on older 737s wouldn't expect. Boeing's solution was a piece of software, MCAS, the Maneuvering Characteristics Augmentation System, designed to automatically push the nose down when it detected the problem. A software fix for a physical problem, controlled by a single sensor, one point of failure on a plane carrying hundreds of people. What airlines were never told, what pilots were never told, was that MCAS existed at all. Boeing had fought to keep it out of the flight manuals, worried that disclosing a new automated system would force the full recertification it was trying to avoid. The FAA, which had been quietly delegating more and more of its own safety oversight back to Boeing for years, signed off. The 737 MAX entered commercial service in 2017. Over 5,000 were ordered. It was Boeing's fastest-selling aircraft in history. Muilenburg called it a triumph. On the morning of October 29, 2018, Rio Nangalan kissed his wife goodbye at Jakarta's Soekarno-Hatta Airport and boarded Lion Air Flight 610. He was 43 years old, a tax official traveling for work. He had no reason to think the flight was anything other than routine. 13 minutes after takeoff, a single faulty sensor fed bad data into MCAS. The system activated, the nose pushed down. The pilots pulled back on their controls, fighting to climb. MCAS activated again, and again. They were battling a system they had never been told existed, with no procedure in their manual to follow. The plane hit the Java Sea at nearly 700 kilometers per hour. All 189 people on board were killed. Boeing's response was not to ground the plane. It was to issue a bulletin, without mentioning MCAS by name, reminding pilots of existing procedures. The MAX kept flying. 5 months later, on March 10, 2019, Clarice Kariuki boarded Ethiopian Airlines Flight 302 in Addis Ababa. She was 29, a Kenyan lawyer on her way to a UN Environment Conference. 6 minutes into the flight, the same faulty logic triggered the same sequence, the same unwinnable fight. The plane hit a field outside the capital at full speed. All 175 people on board were killed. The world grounded the 737 MAX. Boeing's stock began a collapse that would eventually erase more than $200 billion in market value. CEO Dennis Muilenburg was fired in December 2019 and walked away with an exit package worth up to $58.5 million. 346 people were dead. The families got settlement checks. The executives got golden parachutes. And here is the number that connects all of it. Between 2013 and the day of the second crash, Boeing had spent $43 billion buying back its own stock. That money went to shareholders. It went to executives whose compensation was tied to the share price. It did not go to designing a new aircraft. It did not go to fixing the physical problem the right way. It went to making the stock chart look good. And when the reckoning came, the people who had cashed out were already gone. The crashes didn't come out of nowhere. They came out of a spreadsheet. The grounding of the 737 MAX lasted 20 months. During that time, Boeing burned through cash at a rate that would have been unthinkable just 2 years earlier. The MAX crisis alone cost the company more than $20 billion in charges, compensations, and production costs. By the end of 2024, Boeing had posted more than $33 billion in cumulative operating losses. Effectively insolvent, surviving on debt and government contracts while it tried to figure out how to build commercial aircraft again. The company that had built the plane that changed the world couldn't keep its doors attached. So what actually went wrong? Not technically, not regulatorily, financially. Boeing's story is the most expensive case study in what happens when a company confuses the instrument for the destination. The stock price is supposed to measure the health of a business. It is not supposed to be the point of the business. The moment Boeing's leadership started managing to the stock price instead of managing to the product, the outcome was inevitable. It just took 20 years to arrive. Buybacks reduce shares outstanding, which mechanically increases earnings per share. The company looks more profitable on paper without becoming more profitable in reality. Executives get paid, shareholders get a rising stock price, and the engineers flagging a sensor problem get told the timeline cannot move. When the people allocating capital inside a company are rewarded for short-term financial metrics, and the people responsible for the actual product have no power to stop decisions that put that product at risk, you do not have a business. You have a wealth extraction machine wearing a business's clothes. It works spectacularly well, right up until the moment the product fails. And when the product is a commercial aircraft, failure is not a recall, it is a crater in a field. Boeing's engineers knew, they said so. Internal emails released during congressional investigations showed employees calling the 737 MAX a plane designed by clowns, who are in turn supervised by monkeys. That is not the language of a workforce that fell hurt. That is the language of people who had been overruled so many times they had stopped believing anyone was listening. The $43 billion spent on buybacks would have been more than enough to design and certify an entirely new narrow-body aircraft, the very thing Boeing's own engineers had been asking for. Instead, that money went to shareholders who sold their stock and moved on. The liability stayed with Boeing. The losses stayed with Boeing. The 346 deaths stayed with Boeing. The people who made the decision were paid and gone before the consequences landed. That is the financial lesson of Boeing, and it is one worth carrying into how you think about every company you invest in, work for, or buy from. Ask who gets paid when things go right. Then ask who is still there when things go wrong. If the answer to those two questions is different groups of people, if the upside is privatized and the downside is socialized, then what you are looking at is not a sustainable business. It is a timer. Boeing had the greatest engineering culture in the history of commercial aviation. It had the talent, the history, the brand, the order book. It had everything, and it traded all of it piece by piece for a stock chart that looked good for a decade. Watch what a company does with its cash. Not what it says in its annual report. Not what its CEO tells analysts on earnings calls. Watch where the money actually goes. Because in the end, a company's capital allocation is its truest strategy. And Boeing's strategy, for 20 years, was to harvest itself. If you want to see another story where the money trail tells a darker truth than the headline ever did, the next video is right there. And if this kind of financial autopsy is what you're here for, make sure you're subscribed. We do this every time.